Hi everyone, and thanks for hanging out in the kitchen with me on this Friday, a beautiful Friday here in Chicago. Today I'm going to make a shrimp cocktail Mexican style with you, which is made very different than an American cocktail. And the first thing that I'm going to do is talk about poaching shrimp for it. Now you can go into the grocery store and buy the already cooked, peeled and deveined shrimp, or you can buy them raw. So I always have the raw ones around. In fact, the version that I'm going to be working with you here in this recipe here today, I'll get the words out, is the exact same one that we use for making shrimp cocktails and shrimp ceviches and such in our restaurants. This is the it's the Florida Keys pink shrimp, which I just love. You can find these, I know the Whole Foods 365 brand is the same one that we use in our restaurants, and I've had the opportunity to visit the people that process these, and it's a sustainably harvested variety, so I'm always recommending it to people. But I think even beyond its sustainability and the way that it is packaged for you in such a great individually quick frozen way, I just love the flavor of it. We had the opportunity to do a taste test at the processing plant for these of about 5 different varieties of shrimp, and it was all done blind, and my number one favorite was the one we had been using. I just love the flavor of it. So this is Florida Keys pink shrimp. So I've got water. Oops, one more thing I want to do here. I'm going to salt this water. The truth of the matter is the best water to poach shrimp in is at the salinity of seawater. So you want to heavily salt the water, and then I'm going to add, when it's really rapidly boiling, I'm going to add the shrimp to it. Now I've defrosted these shrimp. They are individually quick frozen, meaning that the package that you buy is a resealable package where all of the shrimp are individual in there. They've got this little ice coating on the outside of them. You could literally take those and put them right into the water and poach them from frozen. I like the control of doing it from the time that they are defrosted and going into this water. I'm going to just stir them around to make sure that they evenly cook here. And when this comes back to a simmer, they are done. Okay, now sometimes people will say pour off all of the water, put a top on it, and let them set for 5 minutes. With this size shrimp, you don't really even have to do that. By the time that they come back to the boil, and don't let them boil harder, they'll become tough. They will be ready to go. While that's going on, let's talk about what sets apart a Mexican shrimp cocktail from an American shrimp cocktail. Well, they're both going to start with ketchup. Okay, so that's going to be a commonality, and then they just go in completely different ways. When the American is seasoned, it's typically seasoned with horseradish and other sort of strongish flavors. The Mexican one goes to lime juice and hot sauce, Mexican style hot sauce. So I'm going to do the lime juice first, just using my Mexican lime juicer to squeeze out all the juicy goodness. And I'm going to do equal parts at this point, equal parts of ketchup and lime juice. So you can see that the flavor of this is going to be way different than what you would expect from an American style shrimp cocktail. We're actually going to reduce the influence of the ketchup part of this, and it becomes really a backbone flavor, but not the predominant flavor as I think of an American cocktail sauce being, shrimp cocktail sauce being. Okay, so I got my half cup, I believe, here. Nope, I'm going to cut one more lime and juice that one because I thought we were going to get it all out of the 2 limes there, but I didn't get quite to what I need to do. And the lime juice is super important in this to give the right flavor balance to it. Now the next thing that we're going to add is some clam juice. Now you can find clam juice at almost every grocery store. but maybe you haven't used it before. It's not sort of like one of those big selling kinds of products in a grocery store. So I'll show you what one variety looks like here, clam juice like that. And why am I using it? It's because it's going to add this sort of resonant flavor of the shrimp. I mean of crustaceans, okay? But I just noticed over here that we're coming back to the boil. And so now I'm going to take these beautiful little shrimp and I'm going to put them into an ice bath. This is essential if you want to make the shrimp have that, what I call resilient texture, that almost kind of crispy-like texture. And I'm just using this little spider. It's the kind of spider that they use a lot in Chinese cooking, so you can get this variety for very inexpensive in a sort of a Chinese kitchenware store. I'll turn off the water because we're not going to use that one anymore. Now I am to my half cup. And I'm going to add a half a cup of this clam juice. And as I was saying, the clam juice is going to give that sort of a crustacean round flavor. Rather than adding water or any other kind of, I mean, I guess you could use chicken stock here because chicken stock and shrimp go very well together. So I guess you could do it that way, but I prefer to use the clam juice. I think it rounds everything out in a beautiful way. So we've got equal parts now of ketchup with clam juice and lime juice. So you can see that this is not as thick of a mixture that is what you would expect in an American cocktail sauce. Now, next things that we're going to put in here are going to be onions and cilantro. I'll take a little piece of this white onion here and do a small dice on it. Cutting crosswise here and then cutting the other direction. The nice thing about onions is that they do help you to do the little dice, and maybe you've seen the YouTube videos of people from culinary schools doing the French style onion chopping. I'm not fond of it myself. I'm going to save a little bit of this to use as garnish here. The rest of it is going to go into my pot, but I forgot the one most important thing here. Something that I've taught you guys in some other of these kitchen hangouts, and that is that when you cut into an onion, you bring two elements together that creates a sulfurous compound. And that is the thing that we don't like about onions. You can get rid of it just by rinsing it off. So in order to make this the lightest flavored cocktail, now I'm just going to rinse it off there. And then I'm going to just put this, because it's going to be my garnish on the top, and I want it to be very, very fresh. I'm going to let it soak in the water. If you want to make this even more useful, you might want to put just a little bit of lime juice or a dash of vinegar in that. I'll set this down here, and we'll use that again in a few moments. The herb for this is always cilantro. And I just absolutely love it. You can add as much or as little as you wanted, but I will say also you can use a little bit of mint in here, and it's really delicious with some mint in it. So I'm going to bunch up the cilantro and then cut it crosswise in that chiffonade style. Now watch again how I'm working with my knife, keeping the tip down and then just rocking it in a round-like fashion so that I can go across all of this. And I'm doing it stems and all, working right up against my knuckle in order to know where the blade is at all times. And once I've run out of the leaves, all of this last little bit here can go over to our compost bowl. And then I'm going to add this over here into that mixture. And I'm going to put a little bit more cilantro on our now rinsed onion here. I'll just pull the rest of that in there, and that will go for our final beautiful little garnish on the top of these. Now, after cleaning up my board here, we're going to talk about jicama. So there, oftentimes a Mexican shrimp cocktail will have something crunchy in it. You've got a couple of choices. One would be cucumber, and I know you all have access to cucumber and know it really well, but I thought I would use instead jicama today because we haven't really talked about jicama, and it's a very important part of Mexican cuisine. They're usually about this big and weigh a little over a pound, as just like what you guys experience. Today, I went to get a jicama, and this one was pretty rough looking. So I had to use it. I mean, it was the only one that I could find. And so I decided that I would just like acknowledge that this isn't the most pristine and beautiful. Usually I'm looking more for ones that have absolutely no blemishes on the outside, and their rough barky exterior has a sort of sheen to it, meaning that it's very juicy. Well, this one has obviously been harvested quite a while ago and is set around someplace for a long time. So my suggestion is just clean it up and then cut into it, and let's just see how much of this is usable. Is it all? See, it's pretty on the inside. It was the exterior that wasn't very pretty in this. So what I wanted to show you about jicama, first of all, if you haven't had jicama before, I feel really sorry for you because it is so delicious. It's got this really great crunch, a delicate sweetness. Used to, we said that it was like the flavor of fresh water chestnuts, but a lot of people know jicama, but long before they know water chestnuts. But water chestnuts are a little denser than this. I always think of this as not as like an apple-like texture in a lot of ways, except that it doesn't have an apple-like flavor. This is a root vegetable, so it's going to have a little of the earthiness that you always associate with root vegetables, but it's got this gentle sweetness that I think is really delicious. Now, what you have to know about working with jicama, if you've not worked with it before, is that it does have a tough skin on it. So you don't want to be using a vegetable peeler on it. Instead, you want to go what I would say is about a 1/16 of an inch deep on it, so that you can get, now I'll show you this. I did a kind of funny thing here. So if you pull this like that, you can see that the brown barky skin is going to come off, but just below it, that's all tough. So you really actually want to get that all off of there. So I'm going to cut that off. Just go down a little bit deeper than what you would with a vegetable peeler and you'll be fine, but you can really see a difference between the part that's just under the barky skin and what is below that, about a 1/16 of an inch or so. Okay, so this just gets cut up into, it'll be easier for me to cut it if I just do this, and I'm going to cut it into pieces that I can then cut crosswise into small dice. And you could make these as big or as little as you like, but I'm going to cut them into about 1/4 inch dice here. And you would do the same thing with a cucumber. That's looking good there. I'm going to do the last little bit of it here in about the same size 1/4 inch dice. And then I think that'll probably be enough for us for this batch of it here. But again, I will say that'll kind of be up to you. If you get these basic proportions right in this, you'll have, I say the basic proportions of the sauce right, then I think that you'll be in good stead to just do kind of whatever you want. Next thing that I'm going to put in here is the avocado. Cutting from the stem to blossom end and back around again, splitting the two sides apart, removing the pit, and then I'm going to scoop this out and scoop it out like that, and then go onto the cutting board. Now, I'm a real fan of avocado, so I'm going to put the whole thing in there because I think it's really delicious in a Mexican style shrimp cocktail. So put that there, and then I'm going to do the same thing with the other half of this. When you go to places like Acapulco, Puerto Vallarta, over to the Gulf side, and go to Veracruz or any of the other towns that are on that Gulf coast, there's always going to be places that are making shrimp cocktail, and then it could just be what they would call cóctel de camarón. And you could buy it just that way, or sometimes they'll call it a cocktail campechano, and that will oftentimes have a big spoon of ceviche in it. And in addition to that, it could have cooked octopus. That's very common. Or if it's in a place where they do squid harvesting, then they may have some squid in it. You could get the one that's called vuelve a la vida, which is to take that Cocktail Campechano and add raw oysters to it, in which case you would probably be adding the oyster liquid instead of the clam juice in this. Now let me see what this looks like. And those are almost always served in the big soda glasses. Those really big, beautiful, what we call like malt glasses, old-fashioned malt glasses. And man, they're so good. But even in a place like Mexico City, if you go down into the Centro Histórico, down by the Mercado de San Juan, the San Juan market, there's a place that's a street stall that's super famous called El Caguamo. And they make those gorgeous seafood cocktails, just like what I've been describing. So you don't always have to be on the coast to get something that's super delicious. Now, if you're from Veracruz, or if you have been to Veracruz a bunch, you notice that most of the people will add a splash of orange soda to this. Just saying, okay? Maybe you're from that school, maybe you love that. It's not my thing, but if that's what you love, please go ahead and do it. Now, the other thing that makes this so uniquely Mexican is the addition of hot sauce. So to me, it's more hot sauce than you think it's going to be. I wouldn't say it's an equal part with the ketchup, but I like about half that much. So if I went in half cup groupings here, then I'm going to put about 1/4 of a cup of the hot sauce in there. I'm using the Tamazula, but you could use the Valentina or Buffalo, which is a little sweeter. So that's our base there. And then the last thing that we have to do now is to put the shrimp in here. So I'm going to scoop it out. I put them all in this one corner here so we can see if we can get, and man, I can just feel that they are really what I would call crisp textured. So those are going to go in. I just don't want to get ice in with these guys, though most of the ice is starting to melt over here. So we'll put that on top there. There's a few more of them. Yeah, now I'm having to work around these pieces of ice in here. There's 3 or 4 more, and I'll get those out in just a little bit. So you stir all of this up, and there you've got what I consider to be a really great Mexican-style shrimp cocktail. I'm going to give it a taste. Most everything that we put in there had salt in it, except the lime juice, and it's great to me. I'll show you a couple of different ways to serve this here. One would be like this, to serve to your guests and let them help themselves scoop out what it is that they want, and then serve it with chips, or in Mexico it's typically served with saltines as well. Or if you want to do a sort of nicer presentation, take an up glass, like a martini glass, and serve it in the martini glass, so everybody gets their own portion of it. Again, served with either little tostaditas, totopos, little chips, or with saltine crackers. I think I'm going to put a little bit more of the stuff on top of it there. It's so good. But it's for people that like bold flavors, okay? Because it's limey, it's spicy, and then it's got just enough of that ketchup to kind of add that sweet spice balance to it, or sweet tart balance to it. We have the last little bit of onions and cilantro to sprinkle over the top of it. That will make it pretty and sort of emphasize its freshness now. And now is the moment you've probably all been waiting for. I'm going to invite Lainey to join us here, and she's going to explain a cocktail that I like too, and it goes super well with this, called Verdita. Take it away, Lainey.
Hi guys, thanks for hanging out with us in the kitchen today. So I'm going to talk to you guys or teach you how to make something called Verdita today. So this is sort of a Mexican-American invention, but using really delicious Mexican flavors in it. Not exactly quite sure of the origins. There's sort of multiple different origin stories of where Verdita comes from. But in its essence, what Verdita is some pineapple juice with jalapenos and cilantro. So really beautiful green flavors to it. Now, you can use it all sorts of times, or for many different things. A lot of people love it at brunch, sort of as a green Bloody Mary replacement. That's the way I love to drink it. Or it can really go great with some fresh flavors like the shrimp cocktail or some ceviche, anything like that. So, to get us started, we are going to make the actual Verdita blend first. So, as I said, its main ingredient here is going to be pineapple juice. So this helps not only bring a little bit of fruitiness to it, but also a good amount of sweetness. So you can use something like this, which is like a fresh pressed pineapple juice, or honestly, if you like your drinks a little bit on the sweet side, you can also go ahead and use the canned pineapple juice. There's nothing wrong with that in this, as it balances out the flavor pretty nicely. So I'm going to start with 1 cup. Actually, I'm going to take this off here. 1 cup of the pineapple juice. So that will go into the blender. Next we've got, so I went ahead and cleaned a bunch of cilantro, so took the leaves off. You're looking for about like maybe a loose 1/3 of a cup here of cilantro. I'll show you sort of how I picked it off. We're gonna save this pretty top part for a garnish. But yeah, you can just go ahead and strip off all of the leaves of your cilantro. You really don't want to get the stems in there if you can help it, just as it will obviously create a little bit more of a bitter flavor in with the rest of the mixture. So we'll go ahead and add that into with the pineapple juice. And then this is also sort of to your liking. So you can go as spicy with this or sort of as mild with this as you would like. I chose to do about a half a jalapeno here that I cut up into small pieces. I'm leaving the seeds and veins in. As you guys know, that's where the heat comes. So I like drinks a little bit on the spicy side. But if you are afraid of that, feel free either to cut down on the proportion of jalapeno a little, or, what I would recommend really, is to scoop the seeds and veins out of there. Because the actual outside green part of the jalapeno really adds a nice flavor to this drink. So we wouldn't want to omit that entirely if you were worried about the spice, I would say. Just cut the seeds and veins out, and then you will have very minimal spice to your drink. So, I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And we just need to blend this all together. May I borrow your towel?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
For anybody that doesn't know, the word verdita means little green thing, okay? So that is, this is where all the green comes in. Absolutely. From the cilantro and the jalapeno. So you wouldn't really, you need to get some sort of green chili-like thing in there. It doesn't have to be a hot one, but I think jalapeno's got the best flavor.
Yeah, I do too. And I really just think if you do take those seeds and veins out, you will have very minimal spice in what you're doing. So I'm going to just go ahead and put this right back into what I measured the pineapple juice in, but you have to strain it out. Obviously, we don't want, you see there are some chunks of cilantro and stuff still floating in there. We don't really want that in the final cocktail, so we are going to strain it through a fine strainer. If you're doing a little amount like this, you can always use a tea strainer as well.
Sure. It would be easy enough to do that. And probably some of you have the bar strainers, which look like small tea strainers as well. And that's an easy way to do that. That's a very fine mesh, so it might take a while to get this all strained.
Yeah, as
through.
you can see, it's pretty coarse right now.
You can also see on top it's coarse, but underneath it's completely smooth, and it's really a beautiful green color. That's the thing that I like the most about that. Now, if you want, I will just, you set it over here, and I'll just continue to pour it through, because it's going to take a minute to get it all.
It is going to take a minute to get it through there. So, now that we're doing that, that's sort of completed there. A couple things to note about that. It doesn't last a super long time, as it's got those fresh jalapenos and the cilantro in it. But 2 or 3 days, this mixture will still really taste delicious.
Will it stay that green for 2 or 3 days?
It may start to brown slightly, but it does also depend on what pineapple juice you use. If you actually use the canned pineapple juice, it'll last a little bit longer because there's higher sugar content in it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's really the best. I mean, every time that you've made it for us, I've always thought it was best just made.
Absolutely. But if you wanted to have it for dinner and then say have it for brunch the next day or something like that, I think that would be absolutely fine.
And that's what came out of it this is the stuff that was left in it. So that's kind of a pulp of some of the jalapeno and then serrano.
So now that we've got that, let's talk about the actual cocktail itself. So we do need to add a little bit more flavoring to this in order to make a perfectly balanced cocktail. So the first thing is I always suggest, and especially this is a pretty sweet and spicy mixture, but it has no acidity. So we definitely need some lime juice. So I'm actually going to borrow his lime juicer and go ahead and squeeze about a half. So you need a half an ounce of the lime juice. It's about half a lime. Or it also could be 1 tablespoon. Perfect.
Which are the same thing.
Which are the same thing, yes. So there we go. So we'll do a half ounce of lime juice into the shaker there. You're also, depending on the pineapple juice you use and what sweetness you like your cocktails, you are going to want to add some simple syrup to this as well. Now, this pineapple juice is not the sweetest that I've had.
This is not terribly sweet.
Yeah, so I'm going to add also a half ounce of simple syrup. I showed you guys how to make the simple syrup last week, and this is the exact, yes, so this is made with white sugar, that's why it's clear, but just a simple syrup I made. I do not recommend actually using agave in this cocktail, as something like this has got a lot of body and viscosity to it already, so you're going to come out with a pretty thick cocktail, I think, if you were to use agave instead of the simple syrup, which is a little bit on the thinner side. So we've got a half ounce of both the lime juice and simple syrup. Now we're going to put 2 ounces of our fresh made Verdita mixture. And, of course, the booze. So this can be delicious with Blanco tequila for sure. It can be delicious with vodka even. Clear spirits it would go really well with. But I, of course, am using...
Gin?
Maybe. So actually I was thinking about that right before I came on. And if I did something like gin, I would go more toward aquavit. Something that's got like an herbal flavor to it that would pick up the herbal flavor in this. I think something with a lot of juniper, which is very floral, would probably sort of clash with the Verdita mixture. But if you had something that had a lot of green herbal components to it, I think it'd be delicious. But for today's sake, I'm going to be using Mezcal. Also, I personally love the little bit of smoke that the Mezcal gives to the Verdita and how those two play together. So 2 ounces of our spirit will go in there. And we are ready to shake it up. Thank you.
Now, are you going to serve this on the rocks?
I am going to serve it on the rocks. Now, yeah, I think that the ice dilutes this pretty nicely as it goes. So.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, got my little strainer here. So, as I always say, please strain off the ice that you've shaken the cocktail with. as to not get an overly diluted drink in the end. But it's gonna be a beautiful green color here.
That is really, really beautiful.
With a nice froth. Now that froth comes from the pineapple juice. There's something in the chemical composition of pineapple that froths really nice.
Yeah.
So it's got that. We saved one little sprig of cilantro here to use as a garnish.
Nice.
And there we are.
Verdita.
Verdita. Cheers.
That and a nice Mexican-style shrimp cocktail, and couldn't be better, I think. See you all here tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
Bye.